This is the future.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Warframe video. Today I want to talk about a couple of important quality of life changes that Digital Extremes will be doing in the Dante Unbound update. First of all, let's talk about the nerf to the Helminth version of Nourish. I know it's weird to hear about nerf as I was talking about quality of life changes, but let me explain why the nerf is not as bad as we think. I anticipated that Nourish will get a huge nerf hammer, but it turns out that Digital Extremes are forgiving, and I think that this is the right nerf for the Helminth version of the Nourish ability. So basically what they are doing is lowering the energy multiplier of Nourish from 2 times to now 1.6 times. And then the viral damage buff will be reduced from 75% to 45%. If you ask me, this is hardly a nerf and just a sort of balancing, which is perfect in my opinion. The worst thing that I could think of the nerf is they limit the viral procs that Nourish will give. Say instead of 10 viral procs, the Helminth version can only inflict a max of 8 viral status to enemies. Then I also anticipated that the energy multiplier will be reduced to half, which is why I was suggesting to my community that they would save up for Arcane Energize since it would be useful again. Honestly, the changes to Nourish are in a great spot since this lowers the ability spam, hence making it a good source for abusing also the shield gating mechanic in almost all Warframe setup. Let's be real here, Nourish plus Zenuric's Wellspring and the energy you get from looting energy orbs dropped by killed enemies lets you abuse the energy multiplier. In fact, you will get more than enough energy to recast your abilities, allowing you to spam Nourish or any other abilities that you have, even if you don't need to. I think the energy multiplier nerf is reasonable, and the fact is, we can still have the full benefit of viral, which means we can still mod our weapons with other elements such as corrosive, radiation, and heat setup. Multiple element setup will still work perfect, and it will still be meta in my opinion. The only difference is that Nourish will be slightly when it comes to energy restoration, but I think setup like Rally Point Stynex will still be busted in the game. However, do take note that Digital Extremes said in their recent dev stream that they'll be adjusting Nourish and will evaluate the changes, so there is a possibility that Nourish will still receive another nerf in the future. Another thing that I would like to discuss is the upcoming changes to Mirage Eclipse ability. The developer have given some initial details on the changes that they'll be implementing with Eclipse. The most notable change is that Eclipse will no longer be dependent to light levels. Instead, holding the ability button will trigger the solar eclipse, while tapping the ability button will activate the lunar eclipse. The solar eclipse gets a base 200% weapon damage buff, and the lunar eclipse is changed to 90% damage reduction instead of the 95% that we are previously enjoying with Mirage right now. Take note that these numbers are only applicable to Mirage, and for the Helminth system, it seems like they'll be nerfing the solar buff hard from 150% to 30% increased weapon damage. The idea on this nerf is to make it balance against Rhino's Roar. We all know that Roar is more towards buffing damage over time setup like Slash, while Eclipse is for those setup wherein you want pure big damage in your weapons. The 150% plus ability strength scaling buff from Helminth is too generous to the eyes of Digital Extremes, and this is why they are decreasing the percent of weapon damage buff. The good news is that Lunar Eclipse will stay at 75% damage reduction, and this will be a good Helminth ability for glass cannon warframes or even those tank warframes that wants to get more damage reduction in their builds. The ability will be reliable after the Dante Unbound update, as you can pick the buff and not depend on the light level of a tile set. Just do remember though that the developer told us during their dev stream that they are also making changes to the weapon buff. They said that instead of the usual Eclipse weapon buff, they are considering to be making it like Chroma's Vex armor buff. While it's not outlined in the recent details, still it's safe to assume that we won't get the same hundreds of millions of damage from the setup we are currently using right now with the Helminth version of Eclipse, as obviously aside from the weapon buff mechanic change. The value of Helminth Eclipse damage buff is lowered to 30% in Dante Unbound update. Lastly, the developer will also make some changes to the Prism ability of Mirage. They will remove the environmental damage scaling of the ability, and it will now have a special synergy with your Eclipse ability. When you have the solar eclipse buff, then the damage of the prism is increased by 100%, and while you are getting the lunar eclipse buff, the ability becomes efficient as its energy cost will be cut down to half. By the way, Gara will also receive changes on her passive ability since it's also reliant on light levels. Similarly to the Mirage Eclipse prism changes, Gara's passive also relied on standing in light, and therefore would have the same issues as Mirage regarding guy lighting and inconsistent lighting areas. The scaling with illumination will be removed, and after the next update, when casting an ability, there's a base 15% chance to radially blind nearby enemies for 10 seconds. Each cast without a blind increases your chances by 20% until it creates a radial blind. While this will not make a huge impact, but I can see some benefit here with a Splinter Storm Gara. Remember that stacking Splinter Storm damage requires Mirage Eclipse ability combo counter at max and a good stat stick to gain huge damage cast at the fastest time possible. The radial blind does open up enemies to finish your damage, hence you can use this for a melee crescendo build to stack up combo counter until you get an infinite 12 times combo counter. This means that you won't need to build up or maintain your combo count, and you can just focus on killing and maintaining your true damage Splinter Storm with millions of damage stack. Another thing that I would like to mention, one of my most requested feature finally implemented at Dante Unbound update. This is not exactly an important quality of life change, but I'm happy that after all this years, Digital Extremes will finally have invisibility customization. This affects Warframe with stealth, and what this quality of life change will give is the option to see your Warframe while its invisibility skill is active. At the moment, when you activate an invisibility skill, you most likely will see some sort of spectral form of your Warframe, and if you select dark colors, then you will see close to nothing in your screen. While I like being totally invisible, but it defeats the purpose of looking at your Warframe after purchasing a Tenogen skin and fashion framing it for hours. The invisibility customization will give you the option to be semi-transparent or non-transparent with a glow, so you can still check out your fashion frame while being invisible. Like I have said, this is not that important as it doesn't affect any gameplay mechanic, but it sure is good to know that Digital Extremes are considering even small details that their community are requesting to change. Speaking of invisibility, Loki will get a significant change on his kit during Dante Unbound update. Decoy now also draws 15% of the health and shield totals of enemies within a base of 15 meters, scaling with ability strength and range, respectively. This makes the ability super good for crowd control, or more specifically, aggro control, and I can't wait to try this one out in defense type missions. Additionally, Switch Teleport will no longer root you in place after the teleport, and will now grant you a short burst of movement speed at 50% increased speed for 5 seconds, scaled by strength and duration. After reading the 50% increased speed that scales with ability strength, it's obvious that Loki can be a good contender for speed frame in the game. He will join the rank of Volt or even a Molt Sarin. But if Digital Extremes will make the strength scaling of Switch Teleport insane, then there's a possibility that Loki can be more than that and compete against the top tier speedster in Warframe such as Gauss Prime. Also, let's talk about probably some of the best late game content ideas that I have seen so far that Digital Extremes are planning to add in the Dante Unbound update. It looks like I was right about the Omni Fissure being added to endless missions in the game. If you haven't heard, then Digital Extremes will be adding a new Fissure mission available for both normal and Steel Path versions of the star chart. This is called the Omnia Fissure, which will allow you to crack any era of relic. The mission Omnia Fissure will be either Conjunction Survival, Void Flood, Void Cascade, Alchemy, or the normal survival mission. One Omnia Fissure will always be available in both normal and Steel Path version, and honestly, no matter what type of Omnia Fissure is available, I'm definitely diving into these since they give out more rewards and it lets me try out my builds and enjoy it. One thing that I really like about this Omnia feature is you get to crack whatever relic you want in the mission. This means that all those Lith and Neo relics that are clogging your inventory will soon be put to good use. Aside from that, you will reap other benefits from the Omnia Fissure, like resources that you can use for the helmet system such as Void Gel from Void Cascade missions, and even tons of arcanes which you can use in the Arcane Dissolution system. Not to mention that you also get Steel Essence for the Steel Path honors and other rewards that will probably make farming or platinum making a lot easier. Now, I know some will say that there is no such thing as endgame content in Warframe, but for those who are in the late game, one that makes us still interested in playing Warframe is playing high-end builds and enjoying it in Steel Path or even level cap levels. With the Omnia Fissure, we can enjoy our builds and also get rewarded. A fair warning though, as Digital Extremes has this crazy feature in the past wherein their bot system will actually flag your account as suspicious when you go endless in a Fissure mission and have tons of prime parts and other stuff in your inventory. I have experienced this in the past, and what the system did was impose a 2 weeks trade ban on my account due to suspicious activity. I did clarify this with Digital Extremes, and based on what I have understood, the bot is performing precautionary measures to identify if the player is cheating or not. The trade ban was lifted after 2 weeks, and as you can see, I'm still playing Warframe, and that happened years ago. I'm not sure if this type of system is still in the game, as I'm not doing 8 hours or even 14 hours of long survival anymore. In most cases, I am happy going with other players in a Fissure mission for about an hour or two, then playing other game modes later. If somehow the system is still there, then expect the trade ban for weeks, and this means you can't trade all those prime parts that you have gathered throughout your long survival run. Also, before you can access the new Omnia Fissure, you must complete first the War Within quest, the Angels of Zeramin, and the Whispers in the Walls quest. Most probably, players that are playing the game for a long time are the players who will definitely enjoy this game mode, and I really thank Digital Extremes for doing this, as for years it has been always about new player experience. I really think that all of these Q.O.L changes are meant for longtime players, and I am very pleased with what I am seeing every time in Warframe with the new team. It's safe to say that we are in good hands and we can expect more good things in the future. Dante Unbound update will be coming March 27, and it will come with the newest Warframe, along with new Incarnates, drop rate increase on Netra Cell mission, disruption mission changes, Inner Ross rework, new Deep Archimedia mission, and a whole lot of stuff. It's a chunky update, and I can't wait to try it out in a couple of weeks. So that's all about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Squad leader signing off.
This is the future.